Hi, folks. Just wanted to give you guys a little update on both Bitcoin and Ethereum today. If you watched both my videos, one was on the first one about Bitcoin. I gave a little update prior to the video. That the name of the video was "Should Bitcoin Scale?" But I gave a little update on Bitcoin and what you might expect during the halvening. And of course, another big major event that happened in the cryptocurrency world was with Ethereum. And I guess they had unanimous consent to hard fork, which was amazing to have both these two events occurring in a relatively same period of time. And you would, of course, have expected a heck of a lot more volatility, especially in Ethereum, from the result, which of course you did not get, but I'll cover that a little bit later. So, but let's talk about Bitcoin. Now, I know a lot of you guys are disappointed, but if you watch my video about should Bitcoin scale, you'll remember I gave a little update on that, where I was expecting kind of another leg down before we started to see higher prices. And of course, that's sort of exactly what we got. You know, we got sort of another leg down, and then I think this right here was the halvening itself, which was a nice. This candle right here is really nice, guys. By the way, to see a nice, pretty shadow like that, and then to see a little bit of a rally up here. I think things are looking kind of nice for Bitcoin. Now, if you'll remember in the video, I mentioned that. I was expecting a leg down, anywhere from 600 to maybe 575. We almost got to 600. Wasn't too surprised there. It did end up not going down as far as I thought it was, and I think I ended up getting back in. I think I was in back again about 513 or no 613. I got back in, which kind of nice. It's not doing bad. I wouldn't rule out another leg down, to be honest with you, as this continues to drift around sideways. But I just have a sneaky feeling with Bitcoin that the reality hasn't quite sunk in for people. That there are going to be a lot less Bitcoins now because of the halving that are going to find their way onto the marketplace, onto the exchanges and everything. And I don't know if like, for instance, a lot of these exchanges, well, Coinbase is an example on GDAX, they were just having such a hard time getting Bitcoin that they kind of decided to switch to Ethereum. I mean, there is this really high demand for Bitcoin. I don't know if people realize what's going to happen here over time, but what we're moving into really is a scenario where just one of those classic economic scenarios of high demand and low supply. I'm really not quite sure if reality has hit the markets yet, but it's going to start to. So I just think as long as we stay above 550, 500, something like that, we could probably start seeing higher prices. And along those lines, when I'm talking about markets and stuff like that, I think it's really important, the disclaimer. I don't just kick this disclaimer up for legal reasons either. It's because I believe just about every word that's in this disclaimer. I've mentioned before that I kind of took it off Itbit's website and sort of applied it to me, mostly because I just really think this is what you guys need to be thinking about, especially, a lot of you guys who've been trading a long time. I wonder if you think about a lot of this stuff. And it's a very important thing to consider. So I just will never, ever tell you guys to buy or sell a coin. And I may or may not own any of the cryptocurrency I discussed today. And in this case, I do own Bitcoin. I don't have any Ethereum. I reserve the right to get some at any time, though. And I may. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But one of the things I like to tell people when they're looking at these prices is, traditionally in markets like the Forex or commodities market or even the stock market, when you got a major event that everybody knows about and expects to come up and expects to be happening, it's really not unusual for the market to price it in long before the event actually occurs. And it's pretty typical that when that does happen, you won't see a lot occur. And I know a lot of you had expectations. I was reading on Twitter of people who were, just loading up on the long position, making, getting all these heavily margined positions, expecting some kind of like huge explosion on the day of the halvening. And, I was just, as far as I was concerned, I just think that was crazy to be thinking along those lines, because I'm just so used to other markets where, these kind of things are already priced in. If people have known about it, especially I think with the case of Bitcoin, this halvening has been known since the actual conception of Bitcoin itself, and of course miners and all these people are prepared for it, have gotten themselves prepared for it. And so really the halvening, the price movement on the halvening really occurred down around in here, right? And up in here. And that was sort of an extension of the price move for the halvening. So see, that sucker happened June 14th, right? That's when the halvening sort of got discounted. And then, of course, it went too far, of course, and it's rallied down. So I don't know if you guys, one of the interesting examples of an event that didn't get priced in, that was completely unexpected, was Brexit. You can go back and look on the price charts of that, and that was just amazing, right? It was a complete shock to everybody. It was a surprise. It wasn't priced in. So, when events are coming up that people are well aware of, and everyone's expecting a certain thing to happen or to not happen, and then there's a surprise, a shock, then you'll see these heavy price movements. But, you're just not going to get these movements on something like this, unless, the thing that could have really moved it is if, the network had just sort of, Bitcoin network had just sort of collapsed, which it didn't. So it didn't shrink. It didn't do a lot of things. It just was kind of a smooth little thing. It was just 1 minute it was, what was it, 22 or 24, 25 Bitcoins per block. And then the next minute it was 12 and a half, something like that. Actually, some of the blocks, I think, didn't just immediately move to that. You had a couple of blocks that were 16 Bitcoins, 17 Bitcoins, things like that. So kind of interesting. Another thing for you guys to consider is that the market I'm looking at today is called what? It's called BTC USD. What does that mean? You guys, I don't know if you guys, if you're not a Forex trader, you're not as familiar with this, but what that means is that this market, if you were to go long, then that means you're long Bitcoin and you've shorted USD or the US dollar, right? And of course you did that on Bitfinex in this particular instance, right? So what does that mean? I mean, the thing to remember, though, is that the U.S. dollar has actually not been doing bad, especially on the heels of Brexit, where the British pound, right, and the euro have kind of taken a beating. And actually, the British pound has taken quite a harder hit than the euro did. But let's look at some things here. Let's see if I can get this. So let's go to GDAX. Don't you love this? Here's the new block discovered. Don't you? This is why I love Coinigy and that and so much more. But so anyway, BTC USD. Look at that chart. Let's go look at it. All right. Now, interesting. A little different from Bitfinex. There was this candle here kind of showed up as a gap or a window in Bitfinex. And pretty typically these windows tend to get closed. Not always, but they do tend to eventually rally back up and try to close them. But let's look at something here. This is the British pound. Look at the chart. A little different, isn't it? Right? Well, why is that? Well, British pound's taking one heck of a beating, right? So let's look at the euro. You're going to see pretty similar to the dollar, you know. Well, the euro didn't take quite the beating that the British pound did. It still got some. It's actually been kind of recovering. But for the most part, US dollar has been doing very well. So this is going to get priced into the price of Bitcoin. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't think a lot of people are aware of this little fact when they start looking at it. They're always thinking in terms of crypto, but you also have to think about the market that you're trading against. So if you want to buy Bitcoin and you're buying it with dollars, well, what happens if the dollar's value just shoots way, way up? You're going to see that price reflected in Bitcoin. So the Bitfinex window, let's look at that. That was kind of interesting. When I saw that, I was like, wow. So right here, right, is kind of a gap down. In the candlesticks, that shows as a gap, right? And that tends to get closed, and it hasn't yet. So we're going to wait to see, but the odds are that probably this window will get closed, and we'll start, seeing higher prices. That looks pretty good. And this is what I'm getting to when I'm talking about looking at different charts, different exchanges to see what Bitcoin is doing. So here is the USD on Bitstamp. Look at that. So this was a gap down and then a gap back up. And then there was an attempt to kind of close that gap, right? And then it sort of rallied up. But I'm not sure this gap is closed yet, right? Let's look at the cross on this. Yeah, so see, the gap's not closed yet. This is what I'm talking about how we might begin to start seeing if the markets are going to start closing these gaps, we might start seeing some lower prices before they go higher. And that's all right. I'm not too worried about that. But all in all, to me, it kind of looks like we're in a long-term bull market with Bitcoin. So the interesting part is on halving day, where was this little sucker here. If you look at the shadow, we need to get these crosses out of the way. Let's just look at an arrow here. That just is a beautiful shadow. So much of candlestick trading is about where the shadows are. It's all in the shadows. If you understand the way shadows work and what they mean, you just about could probably figure out what all the different candlestick patterns are telling you, right? The whole game is about, what's in the shadows. And this is something that only candlesticks can show. Bar charts don't do it. And certainly not an OHLC or chart like that or anything like that will show it. So this is really beautiful. So this is really people pushing the price back up after it's fallen really hard. I like that. That shows some bullish demand, right? It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. So I expect that candle will play out. I'm not sure how, maybe a bit lower and then up, but who knows? I'm not here to predict market prices for you. I'm just trying to explain the market situation as it stands, and you guys get a clear picture of what's going on, and then maybe do some better trading on your own. Now, if you'll notice, I tend to just use candlesticks. I don't have, what are the MACDs and the Bollinger Bands and RSIs and stochastics and, I, and then all the different technical patterns that people look at. It's just not for me. I just feel like if I'm looking at a plain old price chart with some candlesticks on it, it's much easier for me to see how things are working. And then if you take into account what's actually going on fundamentally in the real world, and then you look at the price chart, things start to really make sense. So, yeah, I'm looking to maybe try to get in a little bit more, maybe get some more Bitcoins if we see a drop down. Otherwise, I'm pretty much long on this. So we shall see. Time will tell. I'm not always right. My secret is just I figured out kind of how not to lose money. So once you figure that part of the game out, the rest kind of tends to take care of itself. So let's go look at Ethereum. So the hard fork. So if you'll remember in the video, when we talked about part 2, is the short rate on Ethereum was my second sort of update on Ether. And I told you then too, if we see this candle taken out, it's not a good thing. And that's exactly what we did see happen. So we are kind of hitting this point where we're still in this situation of a short raid. So, prices did kind of find some support here and they bounced up off of that, but not very much. And what's really interesting is these prices, Bitcoin, had spiked down quite a bit, and typically Ether responds to that in the opposite direction. If Ether goes down, if Bitcoin goes down, Ether goes up, or if Ether goes up, sometimes Bitcoin will respond to that too. It's kind of an interesting thing. And then of course these last 3 candles here are more having to do with the hard fork, which again, not a real big response to the hard fork in terms of price movement. And so there's just not a lot of momentum. For those of you guys who are into momentum indicators, this is an example in the candlesticks how momentum is already built into it. When you have a big thing like the hard fork, a big fundamental shift that occurs in the underlying asset that you're trading, and you don't really get a big response to it, well, that's an indication. So there wasn't a lot of them. So this is a pretty typical pattern here, what I would call a cliffhanger. I call it a cliffhanger. So you have a big event that happened. You had this big rally up, and then with talk about the soft fork. So that looked pretty cool. And then it just sort of slowly drifted down. And as I mentioned before, I was looking for this candle not to be discounted, but of course it was. So we're kind of teetering really here, not with a lot of support either way, to be honest with you. I probably suspect we're going to see some sideways motion with Ether for a little while, but I think eventually prices go lower on Ether, which will be okay with me because like I said, I'm still very excited about Ethereum, and I think Ethereum has a tremendous possibilities, and I'm looking to get in more. I did some trading with Ethereum and did pretty well. I was pretty happy with it, and I sure would like to do it again. But again, getting back to let's look at the Ether USD price though. See, kind of a different chart, isn't it? Right. So you didn't have these big spikes up like you did with Bitcoin. And why is that? Well, because during this whole time, Brexit was occurring and the dollar was doing pretty well, right? Let's see if we can. I guess they don't have Ether. They just have ETH USD. They don't have Ether against any other on GDAX. So isn't that interesting? So pay attention to what, if you're trading crypto and a fiat, pay attention to what that fiat's doing. It just makes all the difference in the world, guys. If, you know, and this is another interesting point, we may be in, and I've made some money on this, so I know what I'm talking about. We may be in a long-term bull market for the dollar. And I know all of you think differently. But so far, I mean, the numbers are contradicting everybody. The dollar has seemed to be doing quite well. And so this is just going to be a thing when you're looking at for instance, the Bitcoin USD price. You got to remember that is Bitcoin USD. I think a lot of people forget that. So, you know, when you're expecting these big, huge price movements, but the dollar is appreciating, well, you know, don't be surprised if some of those expectations aren't met. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna just leave it there for now. I think that pretty much sums up how I'm feeling anyway about it. And remember, guys, you know, I mean, I've shown you 2 videos. So if you watch the videos, you weren't surprised about the halvening. You weren't surprised about these spikes down. If you watched the Ethereum video, you weren't shocked. The video I said, you know, the update I gave on Ethereum, you weren't shocked about this candle getting taken out. Wasn't a surprise. So, hey guys, remember, if I save you some money, which is what I really like to do, you know, if you can figure out how not to lose money, or at least not how to lose a lot of money while you're doing this, if you figure out that part of the game, the rest happens on its own. So I hope I showed you a little bit of that. That's sort of my focus. So if I save you some money or make you some money, send me some Bitcoin, because I'm out here trading. Getting rather tired of paying cash for my Bitcoin. So, hey, send me some. I'd love it. Thanks again, guys. All right. Bye.